If you get sucked into the Matrix, we will send a phone for you.
Do you believe in fate?
But every movie has a plot hole, and every hole gets filled somehow with whiskey, wine, or blue milk. Just don't cut me off right now. We're the Plotaholics, a breakfast club of two. We're the Plotaholics, ripping plots apart for you.
Yeah, well, that's just like your opinion, man.
Hey everybody, welcome into another episode of the Plotaholics Podcast. I'm Shane Wilson, and I'm joined as always by Brian. Brian.
Hello.
The Brian on the screen. How are you?
Doing pretty daggone awesome. It was hilarious to me that here in beautiful Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania, we're having 70 degree weather in November, but now it's starting to. November is like whoa.
Right, y'all
you can't have this.
Me. Y'all started without me.
Yeah, so now we're in like the low 50s. So I think I'm going to be getting the wood pellet stove burning. Also, perform my civic duty today, and I am praying to God as I count down the nanoseconds when the political ads will get the hell off of all of my media. Yes. I have had it.
Yes, well, you'll be able to enjoy it for a very brief period of time.
Yeah, because it'll become popping up again like soon. And,
I too did my civic duty today.
Nice.
So of course we here on the Plotaholics take the controversial opinion that it's a very good idea to vote.
Yeah, absolutely. And don't whine and cry when your side loses.
And also, just like do a little homework before you go, right? It's probably a little late this year for this, but like make sure that you know where you're supposed to vote and what you're supposed to bring and all of that stuff. Like do your due diligence. It's not like this shit sneaks up on us every year, right? Like you said, we've been getting ads for the last 3 years about this.
Yeah. And make sure you especially double check online. Make sure that you are still on you still have your ballots there, because there are some areas that are scooping people off there nefariously.
Right. Yep. Make sure that you're still registered and all that.
Make sure you are registered.
Make sure that your precinct hasn't changed. Honestly, make sure your precinct hasn't changed anyway.
Absolutely. Make sure your precinct hasn't changed. Take yourself a snack just in case. And do not be afraid to video people that may or may not try to sway you. Right. It is illegal to try to sway votes at the polls. So do not be afraid to stand up for yourself. Okay? Seriously. If you got to go on Facebook Live and call somebody out, go on Facebook Live and call somebody out.
Yeah, you can always count on the Plotaholics to come in with very timely, just barely too late advice.
Yeah, exactly. But also, and honestly, if you ever come up with the idea of, well, I'm not voting, but as soon as you say I'm not voting, you've lost me. Vote.
Yeah, turn us off. We don't want you anymore.
Yeah. Vote. It is important.
This week, Mr. Tan, we are starting a month-long endeavor to watch a handful of films by people who are typically considered comedians, but we're looking at their serious work.
Yeah, comedic actors or stand-up comedians as a whole. So, yeah. And we had to throw a little bit of an audible this week, guys, because the first film that was supposed to lead us off, Stranger Than Fiction, can't find it to stream. So I'm going to have to go out and buy an actual physical copy.
Yeah, but so instead we decided to switch over to Reign Over Me, the Adam Sandler Don Cheadle vehicle.
Oh, man.
Which I have not seen since probably 2009. I've seen it, but I haven't seen it since like a while. You know what I mean?
It's been a while since I've seen it, too.
I saw it once when it was sort of like originally out.
Right.
But like not even when it was first out, because it was released in 2007, but a little bit later than that. And one of the first movies that I got on DVD from Netflix.
Oh, really? Wow.
Yeah. It was in that probably first like 10 or so that I got.
Okay.
And this movie, Brian, like I'll let you do a little synopsis here in a second, but I just want to say, like, this movie is so emotionally effective.
It really is.
The
Like,
soundtrack is like just so fucking good.
I hate BJ Novak even more now than I did before.
BJ, man, like what? He's like,
BJ!
he gotta get to little league practice. So he looked like a little kid in this movie.
He really did. But I mean, as much of a POS as he is in The Office, he is at his worst Ryan Howard behavior in this one. And I was literally screaming at my monitors watching this film, like angrily.
That scene is brutal. But go ahead and give us the synopsis for this thing.
All right.
Let's get into
it. Dr. Alan Johnson, DDS, by chance sees his former college roommate, Charlie Fineman, knowing that Charlie's suffered a tremendous tragic loss September 11th, 2001. As their friendship rekindles, Dr. Johnson, DDS, discovers there's more to Charlie's trauma than he even believes. And his life and his heart are opened just a little bit wider in this experience.
I feel like, Brian, that we don't get enough movies like this.
I agree. I absolutely agree.
And I mean that in almost every way. The frank discussions about mental health, the very positive way in which a male friendship is displayed, and like showing men being there and supporting each other emotionally.
Yep.
Is, I think, a very valuable storyline to see. And we need more of that.
I agree.
I am always so moved by this movie. Like I remember, like, there are a lot of songs on this soundtrack that I was unfamiliar with. Like, I had not really been a Graham Nash fan or a Bruce Springsteen fan. Even this was the movie that got me to Springsteen.
Oh, okay. All right. Nice.
And that song, Drive All Night, and Simple Man by Graham Nash, and then Birds of St. Mark's by, oh man, now his name escapes me. I was just looking at it earlier today.
Let me see here.
It's Jackson Browne. And like, these three songs are songs that I still listen to very regularly, and I discovered them because of this movie. And you can say what you want to about like my like late arrival at those as well. But that Drive All Night song is a deep cut from Springsteen. That's not a song.
It really is. You are not hearing that on the radio. You absolutely are not.
Well, it's an 8-minute song,
right?
But it is, in my opinion, probably his best. It's so good. And all of these songs are so well placed here. And the use, here's another movie that we could have easily done during the Song of Summer, because here he uses music so frequently to distract himself, right?
Right. Absolutely. And I think that, and I said this on Twitter yesterday, this film is criminally ignored.
Yeah.
This film is, when you talk about some of Sandler's hits, this film never even comes up.
It's like people don't even know it exists.
And that's terrible, because this film is such a, like, for all the reasons that you said, we need to have more films where it shows that you can have a male relationship that is men being there for each other.
Right.
And
that
it's
is supportive and loving and caring, and not just like, let's go pound some beers and like that whole thing. And
even when Sandler's character attempts to make it that way, we know it's not. It's hiding something deeper.
Exactly.
And not to mention the fact that it's showing men being vulnerable. And I don't care what anybody says, that is not demasculinization.
No, it takes,
it is humanity.
A stronger man to do that in light of how our society views masculinity.
Right. It takes a stronger man to express his emotions that aren't anger.
Like, Sandler has never been better than he is in that scene at the therapist's office when he finally tells the story. That monologue near the end, where she's like, "You have to tell somebody," right? And
so he goes and talks to Alan.
He talks to his friend, and it's probably 5 minutes of a monologue of him telling the story, and it is so effective.
and you could see Sandler is channeling he's channeling pain. He's got to be picturing what happens if he woke up and his wife and kids were gone. That's what an actor does.
As good as Sandler is in like Punch Drunk Love and Spanglish and some of these other movies where he plays a more serious part, like to me, he's never better than he is in this movie.
Agreed. And
ever,
even
in anything.
And even in well, I haven't had a chance to watch Uncut Gems yet. I do plan on it, but the basketball one that he did, where he's married to Queen Latifah,
yeah,
where you really got to suspend disbelief because I don't see Adam Sandler pulling down a Queen Latifah. I just don't. But even in that, he is never better than he is as Dr. Charlie Fineman, and I really appreciate the fact that they based this story, 6 years after 9/11.
This was something that struck me this time too. Go ahead.
All right. Because of the fact that a lot of films really sort of cashed in on this tragedy to sell tickets. And, that's what films do. You're going to do stuff that's culturally relevant to what's happening. 9/11 was a big, big, big deal. Like when it said, we will not forget, there's no way you can forget 9/11 if you were alive during it. But I really appreciated the fact that we're seeing the aftermath. The rest of the world has moved on, but him.
Mm-hmm.
And I especially enjoy the fact when he has that conversation with his in-laws at the end. I don't keep pictures because I see them everywhere.
Right.
I'm not even going to lie, man. I texted Sharon and I told her, you're not allowed to go first.
Yeah, this movie does weigh heavy on the heart, and I'll say, like, to your point about the 9/11 stuff, I never get the sense that they are sort of capitalizing on the tragedy here.
No, it's just a part of life.
To me, this movie has always felt like the first piece of serious post 9/11 art that looked back at that tragedy from a human perspective, right?
Right.
And for an hour and 15 minutes or so, the only mention of 9/11 that we even got was from Alan's daughter at the beginning. Was he the one whose family was on the plane?
Right.
And from there until like an hour and 15 in, we don't get any more of it.
No, not at all.
And I love that because this movie could have so easily been about that.
Hammered it.
But it's not about that as much as it is about that. It's about this man's struggle to not even move on, but to just like try to forget, right?
Or try to just exist.
Try to distract himself.
Right. And, when you look at films, you even look at films like Dear John.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, they're not so much capitalizing on 9/11, but 9/11 is still very, very, it's heavily mentioned.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like he goes and he's already in the military. And the reason why he and Savannah never see each other is because he's in Iraq, so. But with this, you're absolutely right. The only mention that we got of it within the first hour and a quarter is, the one whose family died on a plane.
Yeah.
That's it. And because
that is vague enough that it could be
very vague. It could have been anything. Yeah. It didn't have to be it could have been anything.
And that shows, I think, that at this point, 6 years after the fact, how deeply ingrained in our culture that moment was, that just that brief moment, like the one that died on the plane, like that meant one thing in 2007, right? It doesn't matter how many planes had crashed between 2001 and 2007. Like that was one thing.
Right.
Especially if you were a New Yorker.
Right. Exactly. And shout out to Mike Bender, who is the writer, director, and plays a supporting role in this as Brian Sugarman, because he did a great job writing this.
Yeah.
And I think we can all agree that being a New Yorker is something that unless you live there, you don't know what it's like.
Right.
You can watch Law and Order. You can watch everything that takes place in New York. You might think you have an idea, but you don't know.
Yeah. I mean, I went to New York and I was there for a week, and it is, and all that really gets you is the acknowledgement that it is so vastly different from anywhere else you've ever been.
Right. And I've never even been to New York City. I've seen it from a distance from across the water.
Yeah.
In Jersey.
Yeah.
But I've never been there.
Yeah, I went in college. We stayed like a block off of Times Square, and like it was dope. Like, I mean, I loved New York, but you do get the distinct feeling, and this was in 2005 when I was there. Mm-hmm. You get the distinct feeling that it is very different from anywhere else you've ever been. And in 2005, like the streets were still very much like alive with the echoes of that tragedy, you know?
Right. And I think that when you look at this film and the way it was written, and I like the way you said it, when all the little girl said was the guy whose family was on the plane. If you're a New Yorker, you know what that means.
Yeah.
And this film probably, with the exception of The Warriors, really sort of embraces you in New York.
Well, and even like when we meet Alan's parents, right, at the beginning of the film, and his dad, who is sick, is just like, I hate this city. Why did you bring us here? Right. Like,
right.
That whole thing, like, because obviously he's like brought them to New York so that he can take better care of them and like be there for them in their old age. But his dad is like not about it.
He ain't about that. He ain't about the Big Apple life.
No,
he's not. And I'll tell you what, man. I'm not even gonna lie. As much as I would love to visit New York, I kind of don't, because I don't know what to expect. You know what I mean? Like, because, there's certain times where you watch some of the older films of New York, and once again, I'll reference The Warriors or Taxi Driver, or you think as soon as, like, every block you're walking on, you're probably going to get mugged by some dude with crazy hair. And then on the other hand, though, it's like nowhere you've ever been, so you never know what to expect. So maybe I do have sort of that tourist-itis where it's like, I don't know what to expect, so do I even want to go? Or would I rather just experience from what I see on TV? But this film really sort of, granted, this film, New York is as much of a character as Charlie and Alan are. And we've talked about that a lot, where a really good film makes its setting as much of a character as the humans. And they do a great job. And so we meet, so we discover Alan just happens to see Charlie riding on his scooter. Mm-hmm. And Charlie just ignores his call, blah blah blah. And Alan sort of seeks him out. Yeah. Because, he tried to reach out to him when he heard about the tragedy. Right. And of course, Charlie is just pushing everyone away. Mm-hmm. And we find out just how painful it's been for everyone around him. Because, Brian Sugarman, when we first hear about Brian Sugarman, oh, he's some shyster lawyer, blah, blah, blah. He's like, no, I was his best friend. Right. And he shut me out, wants nothing to do with me, will not look at me, will not talk to me. How painful would that be? Yeah, he has this protective landlady that helps him, that helps keep him separate from everybody. His in-laws are they mean well, but they're like a little bit overbearing, it's about them and their pain. It's not about Charlie. Right. And, dude, Robert Klien and Melinda Dillon are very good in this movie because they're not bad people. They're coming from a good place. They're just doing it the wrong way. And as much as it's about them, but maybe it should be because they also lost. They lost 4 people too. You know what I mean? Right. So, but it's almost but they can't understand that grieving it cannot be universal. Well, that I think is what this film does so well, is that it shows so many different modes of grief. It also is a wildly complex human story because there's so many moving pieces here, because while all of this stuff is happening with Charlie and Alan, you also have Alan's relationship that's going through its struggles as well. Jada and his work life and all of this, right? You have these two guys, and what's really interesting is that Alan, I think initially is infatuated with Charlie's lifestyle because it feels free, and
he can go and come as he wants to. He doesn't have familial obligations. He doesn't have a job that he has to answer to. And that's all happening while Alan's job, he's feeling pressure at work because of this like sexual harassment thing. And he's dealing with his wife, who is not like listening to or not into the fact that he's spending all of this extra time.
Or expects him to maintain the routine, and she's not picking up on the fact that he needs some him time.
Exactly, yeah.
And when you talk about his job, not even just this sexual harassment suit, which we'll talk about in a second, but also the treatment that he's suffering from his colleagues. You know,
yeah, they're all dicks too.
Let's talk about Alan's job for a minute.
Yeah.
So the way basically I like the way they do it as well. Like when you first see him as a dentist, it almost seems like at first, okay, so he's going to be the only black dentist. No, there are 2 other black dentists. It's actually a balanced dental practice.
It is.
You look at it racially, but then
considering the city where they live and practice.
Right. But all the other partners have sort of phased him out where they it's them versus him. Meanwhile, he's put up all the money for the practice, like all the initial startup and everything.
Yeah.
He's on the hook for.
Right.
And they're sort of treating him as if he's this lesser.
Right.
nobody.
Exactly. Yeah. That was so interesting to me, right? Because eventually he like grows a set because of his relationship with Charlie. And he's like, look, man, I'm about to let go of some of y'all if you don't shape up. Right. Like,
right. It's
when
like
he finally gets that backbone, it's so like satisfying.
It really is, because and the part of the reason why he gets it, so he has a patient who is Donna Remar, who's played by Saffron Burrows, she is very interesting in this.
She is interesting.
She's a very interesting character. Like the mental health undertones of this film are very, very strong.
Yeah.
And it's showing a wider, granted, this is Charlie and Alan's story, but this woman has an important part to play as well. She's a woman who we discover her husband had a completely separate life from her and had been cheating on her the entire time that they were married. So she goes in to get dental work, and because she sees Alan as safety, she wants to have a sexual relationship with him, which he does not want.
Yeah.
And because he stands up to her and sends her off, and I still say that his secretary, if she would have just left well enough alone,
yeah,
it wouldn't have gotten to this point. But his secretary embarrasses the woman.
Yeah.
So she brings up a lawsuit. And then Alan gets pulled into his partner's office, and they're talking to him as if he's a nobody.
Yeah. Like some like new hire.
Right. And they basically tell him, you need to fix this. And then call her in here and get her. Number one, if someone is filing this kind of lawsuit, any lawyer will tell you, do not be alone with this person.
No.
Do not contact this person. Keep it with the legal channels.
Yeah.
So they're already giving him bad advice. And then when he meets with her, she explains where she's coming from. He takes some pity on her, and she does the right thing. But I really think it's hilarious because this other subplot involving Liv Tyler's character, Dr. Angela Oakhurst, it's funny how all of these stories come together because he had been talking to Dr. Angela because they both practice in the same building.
Right.
And it's kind of a passing by friendship where she's trying to politely tell him, why don't you just come in and have a session instead of.
I love that line. She's like, you're going to owe me some free dental work if we keep running each other in the parking lot.
And I love it because that lets you know their dynamic. And Liv Tyler, no matter how big or how small her roles are, she's amazing in all of it.
She's great. Yeah, she's good in this.
And
but I love that it seems that the film is implying that at the end, right, that this Remar and Charlie are starting to sort of see one another and like find each other, right?
Right.
And I really like that. And it's not over the, like, it doesn't bang you over the head with it. It never like offers up a potential romantic relationship as like a solution for him or a fix.
No, it just seems like it could be another friendship.
Right, exactly.
or just someone else to care about.
Mm-hmm.
And he's not rushing to it, which is good. You know,
He
and
finally like acknowledges her, and he's so quick to shut down anybody.
right.
Basically, whenever he first meets them, and the fact that he doesn't immediately like ask her to leave or whatever when she's like left there by herself, right?
Right. And he even says, yeah, she can stay. Fine. Whatever. And he's
Right.
just sort of like sneaking peeks, like it's kind of like a nervous puppy.
Well,
like,
because he was like he had the hots for her the whole time.
Right. But at the same token, he doesn't want to. I think that in his mind, he's still grieving his wife. He's still in love with his wife.
And
so
and
it's like
loses somebody in that fashion would have a hard time moving forward, right? Like moving on to the next person.
Right.
Because you didn't get resolution or closure from that other relationship.
Right. But I mean, but he's also showing though that he's not a monk, because he always comments about how he finds Liv Tyler attractive, how he finds this woman attractive. It's almost like he's got so many conflicting emotions. He doesn't even know how to register them. Like when Alan and Charlie go to the Mel Brooks Film Festival, and he finds out his dad is dead. He goes, yeah, that sucks. Why don't we go get pancakes?
Right. It's always reflection, right?
Right. He doesn't know how to. He just doesn't know. He doesn't get it. He can't remember.
Well, and he's been filling his life up with projects ever since that happened, right?
Right.
He's got to remodel the kitchen over and over again because that's what she was working on. Like that was like they've gotten in a fight over that right before she left.
Right. And he even said, you know, I yelled at her. I swore, you know, I yelled and swore at her over this. And those are the last things she ever heard me say. And I think if they don't have that fight,
then he could have
moved forward a lot easier. But it was the fight that did it. It wasn't just, and I really like that too, because you're going to have someone that goes, well, a lot of people lost someone that day and they're not acting like that. It's not just the loss. It's the circumstances behind the loss and the circumstances before the loss. And
for every like Charlie Fineman story, there are 1,000 other ones that echo a lot of the same notes from that day. Like this is one person's journey toward, you know, self-forgiveness or something. You know what I mean? Like it's one man's journey through that cloud, and everyone, and that cloud being the cloud of loss and grief, and everybody's journey through that, it looks a little different. And that's one thing that this movie tries to show us. Even though it spends most of its time and energy focusing on Charlie.
Right. Did you also I got this as well. I got a lot of Good Will Hunting vibes as well.
Like the aesthetic of this is very Good Will Hunting for sure.
It really is. Where you've got someone that is in a lot of pain, has gotten very, very good at deflection, is like, you know, 12th degree black belt level. And then you've got somebody that is able to just penetrate that barrier, you know, and them being told it's okay. It's okay to feel what you feel. Yeah. Instead of in a society where we're told to just suck it up, you know, when people are just so avid to just tell someone to just suck it up, you know, and the only thing that I really found an issue with, and I know that it was a product of the time, but you know, the
language,
some of the language where, you know, they're using the F word, and it's like,
so
that was like really the most problematic for me.
So I've read about this movie a little bit today, and some of the things that I've read said like certainly Charlie is dealing with, you know, PTSD and depression and other like mental health issues brought on by the loss of his family. But a lot of writers also said that he exhibits like characteristics of someone that might be on the autism disorder spectrum.
Yeah.
In the way that he has like very little filter, and the way that he acts around people, and just like physical tics and mannerisms and things like that. And so like, I think that that's probably part of why they just decided to have him use some of that language, is just to demonstrate like his lack of filter.
That makes sense.
I don't know exactly why they decided to let Don Cheadle use that word later in the film.
I think a lot of it is the time.
Yeah, I agree.
It's the time. And it doesn't make it okay, but I mean, it's the explanation. It was the times, you know. I think that we were fine. I think that we were still a few years away from moving away from that.
Yeah. Hot take of the film, though. What is up with Falcon and that deep V?
Oh my god.
He's like, why'd they have to do him like that? Like, yeah, that V was deep though. Like, it does plunge.
Oh god. The comedy of this is very funny.
Yeah,
the comedy is so
moments.
good.
And
there are some
that levity
moments.
to relax,
to deal with it.
Know? I wanted to point out something else that I read about.
Excuse me.
You're good. I wanted to talk a little bit about the video game that they play.
Oh, Shadow of Colossus.
Yeah, and how
God, those graphics are terrible. I can't believe they were cutting edge at one point.
I know. Let me see. I wanted to look at. I was reading one thing. I want to go back and find it real quick, so that I can make sure that we have that I say this correctly. Yeah. So this is somebody was talking about the Shadow of Colossus. It was either Sandler or it might have been the director. What's his name? Bender.
Bender.
Yeah.
Mike Bender.
Yeah, and so it says, this was Sandler said this. Let's see. Charlie can be seen playing Shadow of Colossus, and he plays it convincingly. If you watch carefully, you can see that he's defeating the Colossi in order. Adam Sandler said in an interview that they didn't want the game to just be a throwaway bit of characterization and actually picked this specific game to symbolically represent Charlie overcoming his grief. And so he plays through the Colossus, like the bosses in order through the game as he's like working through his grief, which I think is also like a really nice detail.
I think so too, because, you know, when you deal with, you know, obviously when you look at the Colossus, like number one, that's a massive adversary to deal with, you know, for those that don't know what a Colossus is. Not just a Russian character from the X-Men. Mm-hmm. They're powerful creatures of Greek mythology. And so I think that is very, very cool. And I like the fact that I like how Alan gets hooked into the game as well, showing that he has his own Colossi to topple.
And this is just a little bit more on that. Charlie playing Shadow of Colossus is a brilliant metaphor since the plot revolves around pursuing and knocking down giant creatures the size of buildings who had done nothing to incur the attack. Much like the fall of the Twin Towers themselves. Not only that, but the main character of the game, Wander, is on a quest to resurrect his dead lover, not unlike Charlie having lost his wife and daughters.
Yeah, that is really huge, because I'll tell you what, man, that could be why he's drawn to the game.
Right.
Because you notice that's the only game he's ever playing. He doesn't play anything else. He's never playing anything else.
Yeah, I just thought that was a nice detail, and I wanted to like make sure that we touched on that a little bit, because it's, you know, and even when you talk about grief and like how it like weighs on you and how it can feel insurmountable, right? Like, yeah, I like a lot of what they were doing there. And then just a note on the PTSD and stuff. This all comes from tvtropes.org. Charlie, for the most part, appears to have high-functioning autism due to childlike behavior stemming by listening to music, social awkwardness, and preference of solitude. However, his behavior is actually a result of untreated PTSD or depression and prolonged grief-induced isolation, as he used to be more social. While it isn't confirmed or not acknowledged, Charlie appears to have autistic coding to his character. And I would say that I like the idea that, just as a bit of characterization, that his prolonged isolation at this point, like 6 years worth, would sort of revert him socially, right? Like he would sort of, I mean, think about how it felt the first time you went out to a public place after being after living through the pandemic, right? Like I know I felt weird. Like I forgot how to like order a drink from the bar. You know what I mean? Like,
Yeah,
like,
it kind of it feels
now
different.
or later, or like, how does this work? I don't know. Like it really does. You do kind of unlearn some of those things. And
Yeah.
especially for somebody who, even when he was traveling through the city, would do everything that he could to block out everybody else with these big headphones. And, he rode the scooter so he didn't have to take public transportation and, all of this stuff.
Not to mention the fact that you figure in New York City, no one has time to pay attention to each other.
Yeah.
Everyone's on their own way to do something.
Mm-hmm.
And I think you're absolutely right. And I do think, because I mean, you even look at certain films that deal with people being isolated. Look at, I think Castaway is kind of a different animal because we don't see Tom Hanks's character once he gets home right away. You know what I mean? But like you even look at sort of, I don't really want to use the Blue Lagoon or Return of the Blue Lagoon because those people never really lived in society.
Right.
But yeah, I mean, but if you look at, say, I guess you can almost equate it a little bit to films of people when they're returning from war.
I was about to
they
say,
they have issues sort of reacclimating into everyday society.
The Hurt Locker does a nice job of that. This guy, he was like one of the like bomb diffusers, right? Like so he was like doing IED stuff.
Yeah.
And then when he came back home, it's so interesting, such a good film, because whenever he's in the war zone, the camera is like handheld, and so it's like shaky and everything following him around. When he comes back home and he starts trying to live a civilian life, it shows him like in the grocery store, right? Looking at the shelf, just trying to make a decision about what to get, right? Like his wife sent him over there to get some macaroni and cheese or something, right? And he's just looking at all these brands and he can't make a choice. Whereas his day-to-day life in the military was like cutting wires in a split-second decision. And here, like, he's overwhelmed by the simplicity of it, right?
Right, because
and there's this one shot of him down, like the camera's at one end of the aisle and it shoots all the way down, and it's as still as a camera has ever been, right? Just watching him like linger in this choice,
right?
And it's such an effective moment, right? Like this, it like you said, it shows the isolation. Like he's alone on this grocery store aisle,
right?
And here's a man that like was more at home in the war zone, right?
Right, and it's amazing how that happens. It's amazing the way it's sort of shown, because it definitely tells you don't know how you're going to react to certain things until you're in the thick.
Yeah.
Until you're in the thick of it, whether it's grief, whether it's war. You don't know how you're going to react. And I think with Charlie doing everything that he possibly can to be not seen, that's the best city in the world to do that in, other than Los Angeles.
Right.
But now the one thing for me, and it kind of made me, I don't even say raise an eyebrow, but I wonder how difficult it must be to live still in that same city, in that same apartment. Like, it had to have been hell to still be living there.
Well, and I think that's why the resolution of it is what it is, right? Like that he finally moves out. Yeah.
Right.
Because oh man. Okay, let's talk about, I want to make sure that we touch on the aftermath of his like telling Alan his story.
Oh man, that is brutal. That is probably the most brutal part of the movie, because now Charlie is blasting the television.
There's like 15 to 20 minutes here, like starting with when he tells the story through his arrest. That is just some of the most emotionally brutal filmmaking I've ever watched.
Absolutely. Because you can sort of feel him taking a deeper downward spiral.
Right. And he says early on, I can't drink, right? Like he makes that point
right
really early in the film. And then as soon as he like has this emotional moment, he goes and buys a bottle of booze. He goes and gets his handgun. And you think like, oh my God, like this guy's going to end it all here. And he tries to do suicide by police. He finds some cops like in a little diner, and then he like goes and holds up this cab driver in the middle of the street.
Yep. And then turns the gun on the cop.
And he's like, just do it, man. Just do it. Right. Like he's like not talking to the police officer, right? Like he's just mumbling to himself, like just begging for this cop to like end it for him. But when
Right.
he's walking through that apartment with the gun in his hand, and it flashes in and out of like him seeing the girls running around him.
Oh my God. I
And
was in tears.
God, that whole thing is
I
just
was
so
crying.
brutal.
I
It's
am
so
not even ashamed to say I was crying.
well, and he, after that, after he tells that story and he's like forced to live in that memory, that night on television, they're talking about this like terror alert, like being raised because there are credible threats of another terrorist attack. And like
Right.
that was the world that we lived in for like a decade, right? Like
Exactly. I mean, every day, terror threat level orange. Just like, oh
right.
my God. And then, but you notice though, he never let the landlady see the gun because it's
Right.
like he knew she would stop him.
Yeah.
And I love the fact that
couldn't do it himself, right? Like that's
right,
the other thing. Is like
he couldn't do it himself, and he couldn't let anyone stop him from doing
from
something.
trying it. And
right.
he was, I think it's like it's such a like pragmatic, analytical person that knows that they can't pull the trigger themselves, and so figures out how to make someone else do it to them.
Right.
At least because in most other situations, that's how that would have gone. Right.
Absolutely. Absolutely. But I love the fact, and it sort of goes to show that landlady just came right in. Charlie, are you okay?
Yeah.
Like you feel how important he is to her.
Yeah.
And
she's probably found him like early on in much worse spots,
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Before
and
he
then,
completely started to disassociate,
Right. And then the cops just beat the ever-loving shit out of him. I mean, wow.
Yeah.
Very hard to watch.
Charges do get dropped though, because as the lawyer points out,
nobody
wants look.
Yeah, we can't have it out here that the cops beat up a grieving widower from 9/11. Can't have that.
Can't have it.
But then of course they decide that he needs to stay because of his issues. And that's when, you start to get the revolution. Oh, real quick. Furthermore about Charlie and how he tries to give Alan $1 million.
Right. Because
they got into that argument. And Sugarman is ready to rip Alan's head off. And that's when we find out Sugarman says, this guy was my best friend.
Yeah.
It's my job to protect him.
Yeah. And he's like, and Alan is like, I don't want his money. Like, I don't need his money. He didn't even realize he was that rich,
Right. Like Charlie, like at first I was like, how is Charlie having able to afford this lifestyle? Because he don't seem to care about money. It's like he's lucky to have people around him that care about him. And he's lucky his best buddy was a lawyer that could handle his affairs.
Right. Well, he was a dentist for a while.
Yeah.
And there was probably some sort of life
insurance policy. That's true. That's true. Sharon and I both have policies on each other.
Yeah.
I told her, I said, I never liked a girl enough to get an insurance policy. Now you can now I can just have a quick trip down the stairs. And what's crazy is that the first landing goes to a window.
Yeah.
So if she happened to just give me a little playful nudge, I'm going to go out that window and that shit ain't going to tickle.
Yeah.
They
have this hearing to decide after his 3-day evaluation. They have a hearing to decide whether or not he should be committed.
Right, and they're talking about having him there for at
this
minimum.
This is where BJ Novak does his.
Oh man, that was so evil.
He pulls pictures of the kids out in court, and
it's showing it to him.
Yeah, and it triggers this huge breakdown. Eventually, Donald Sutherland, not to be confused with Dick Van Dyke.
No, you can't.
Is like he's the presiding judge, and he's like, look, this is a family concern. You guys have to decide what to do with them.
Right. And what really gets me is that BJ Novak doing what he did. And it really stings so hard. And I was really, really glad because we're seeing a lot of that now in our justice system with this grandstanding in the court. We saw it during the Parkland case, which was painful to watch. But seeing it here, and I think that this was, and a lot of people would watch a scene like that And I'm sure a lot of lawyers would be like, oh, you couldn't get away with that. But it's happening.
Yeah. Well, I mean, and I would only argue that I think Charlie has a shitty lawyer, that he never objected to that.
Freaking Ted Raimi.
I know.
Like, Ted Raimi really, really needs to get it together. Like,
he does.
He's so used to, being in Evil Dead that he forgot how to lawyer.
He did forget how to lawyer. Regardless, they decide to call off the dogs, as they say, and Charlie moves into a new place, and it seems like he's on the mend. I love Liv Tyler as this therapist, like how patient she is with him and how caring. Like that's a therapist that you want to have. Yeah, because first he spends time telling her about how he appreciates her body, which is rude. Right.
And then telling her she's too young to be a therapist, which is rude. And then she just finally tells him, look,
I'm a patient person, but at some point we're going to have to
talk about you. Can this be over now? If you want. But you got to talk to somebody.
Yeah.
And I'll tell you the truth, man. I think that a lot of people, now granted, I have no medical degree, no psychiatric degree. I've seen therapists, but if you're a budding therapist, watch how Liv Tyler handles this guy.
Yeah. She's kind at every turn, right?
Mm-hmm.
But I think that's probably a trait of most therapists. But yeah, like I think that the ending is it's not a happy ending as much as it's like trending in a positive direction, right? Like
right. And there's at least resolution. There's at least some resolution.
I like that it resists like the flowery ending, right? Like
right.
It's imperfect, but it's progress.
Exactly. He moves out to start his healing process. It's not a dramatic shift, but it's enough of a shift that we've at least we have this portion of his life resolved. Well, we still have other things to resolve.
Also interesting how much brighter this new place is than the old place.
It's way brighter. It's like it's a whole
and much more open too.
Yeah. I was just getting ready to say, yeah, it's a much more open space, more natural lights coming in, showing that he's ready to at least try to start healing. Yeah. He already took the first step with moving.
Yep.
He gave that lamp back.
Mm-hmm.
And he left this beautiful kitchen. And I love the fact that the kitchen meant something to the mother-in-law, but the father-in-law is like, it's just a kitchen.
Just a kitchen, right.
Like, he doesn't get it. He doesn't get why it was so important.
Yeah.
Meanwhile, if I was that landlady, I'd be happy as crap because now you can charge a buttload of rent for that remodeled kitchen.
Yeah, for sure. No, I mean, it's a solid ending for sure. And
it really is.
And of course, we also get the Alan bit, right? Like,
yeah, we get a resolution to Alan. You know, like we got him getting his resolution at work a long time ago, and now we're getting the resolution to his personal life.
And we also get Alan riding off on that scooter,
which is hilarious.
Which is to imply that this new life for him will be a bit more free, like a bit more understanding, right? Like he has learned something here,
right?
There's this really great symmetry in this film where like the opening of the film shows Charlie riding around on that scooter at night. And it plays that song, Simple Man, right?
Yeah.
Over the opening credits. And then it's a while before we meet Charlie again, but that's how the film starts. And the film ends with Alan riding the scooter with the same song playing. And it's this interesting sort of like torch moment, right? Where we are able to see that they've both helped each other.
Right. I really like now here's the thing. Jada Pinkett, I wasn't a big fan of her character in this film. And I think it was more her and the way I don't know what it is, but I think at the same token, I kind of get where she's coming from as well, as more as I think about it, because they've had this lifestyle where it's been, you go to work, you come home, and we're just always together.
It could feel like a midlife crisis, or like he's stepping out, or like any of those things, for sure.
Right, exactly. And at certain points, she just kind of has a chuckle because she knows him so well.
Yeah.
But then it's like, whoa, you're really trying to make a real dramatic change. Why is this coming out of nowhere?
Without talking to me about it, right?
Right. How could you demand such changes without even telling me there's a problem? How can I wrap my head around that you had a problem when this is the first I'm hearing about it?
Well,
it's kind of like the episode of Letterkenny when Stewart is dating Katie and he's just giving her the silent treatment. So you're going to communicate that you're mad at her by not communicating. Exactly. That's kind of what Alan does. It's like he jumped right away from her. He took Charlie on as a pet project just to get away from home until he realized just what all it had to entail.
Yeah. And sometimes I think that we can dig in so much on something like that we can feel like we don't have a way back. And so the ending of the film where she's just like, just come home. Like, it's so nice because like that statement, it says everything, right? Like, we'll figure it out, just come home. And I think that's like a very simple, very beautiful sort of sentiment,
Exactly. And I think that at the end of the day, that's really what we want when it comes to a lot of our spouses and stuff, everything else, just come home to me.
Right.
Just
and in the same moment that, Charlie is in the midst of making a new home and trying to find his way forward. Like, I don't know. It's just a really beautiful, complicated ending.
It is, because it goes to show that while Alan has this new bit of sort of clarity,
like they
still have work to do,
right? Like, yeah,
right. That was never his goal.
Trying to leave his wife. He loves her, but like they need to be better communicators, and
they need to be able to give each other space, and they need to have a life sort of separate from one another. Absolutely. In their own ways. But at the end of the day, when she says, Alan, please just come home, that's not her saying, get back here so I can get my hooks into you. Right. It's, you are my partner.
Yes.
And I love you. Please
and we've got
to work on us.
Yeah. And we've got to try on this deep V Falcon costume before Halloween.
Damn straight.
If we're going to go win this costume contest.
Exactly, because hey, at the end of the day, it's all about the costume contest.
That's right. And honestly, I would rather see Jada Pinkett in that costume than I would Don Cheadle.
Absolutely.
Hot take central over here today.
There you go, man. It's all the way live, man.
Yeah. All right. So Reign Over Me, Mr. Tan, was made on a $20 million budget.
It was made on a budget.
$22.2 million at the box office. Currently sports a 64% on the tomato meter, but with an 81% audience score.
Yep. And that just goes to show how criminally underrated this film is.
Indeed. Here's Bartender Smiley, and we will come back with our ratings.
Yes.
The Plotaholics rating system for the movies is a pretty simple system. Basically, they rate movies based on how many shots it takes to get through them. So if you got a good movie and you get through it all the way sober, then it takes 0 shots to get through the movie. And then if you got a really bad movie, then it could take up to 5 shots to get through the whole thing. I think you can try to figure out the middle part yourself. So what can I get you?
Would you like to take this one first, Mr. Tan?
This film has what you want out of a drama. The drama of it is not super theatrical. It's very, very realistic. Lovable characters, deep, nuanced characters. Like, really, the only real villains, quote unquote, of this film are just your regular everyday schmucks. Nothing over dramatized, which is what I like in my dramas, if that makes sense. Mm-hmm. This is a 0 shot rating for me. This is the type of film that you can watch multiple times and it will not make you lose the emotional appeal. And this is Adam Sandler at his absolute best. Don Cheadle at his absolute best. Don Cheadle, as an actor, has come such a long way from the character Rocket in Colors. And every time he is on screen, he is just a delight to see, no matter what. That cool chillness of him just seems to fit everywhere he goes. BJ Novak is a dick, but I do want to see his new movie. And yeah, 0 shot for this guy.
I agree. It's so good. It is so nuanced and so complex and so complicated, and it never feels overly long, even at 2 hours and 4 minutes. It is very good, and like you said, the cast is phenomenal from top to bottom. Adam Sandler's never been better than this, and not even in Uncut Gems. He's never been better than this quiet until provoked, emotional, reflective character, and it's an incredibly effective, incredibly powerful film with an amazing soundtrack.
Absolutely. I agree 100%. I really wish that we could see more of this from Adam Sandler. I really wish that we could see more of this side.
We should have just done Serious Sandler month.
Yeah, because you figure he's got a couple. He's
got
a few
to do the next 3 weeks. Because we're not going to, but you've got this, you've got Punch Drunk Love, you've got Spanglish, you've got Funny People, you've got
I had someone try to tell me over Twitter that Funny People was just as good, and I can't agree with that. It's nowhere
good,
near as good.
But
it's good, but it's not on this level.
Yeah.
I would definitely put this as Sandler's best film.
Yeah.
Period.
I agree. Punch Drunk Love is a close second for me.
Yeah, I can get on
Punch
board.
Drunk Love is a wildly good movie.
It truly is. It truly is. I'll tell you what's a good movie. Our film that we're going to be doing next week. Eternal Sunshine of the Spotless Mind. Yeah, I'm saying this in my best in a Sean Connery voice.
Yeah.
Eternal Sunshine, you piece of crap, Trebek.
Yeah,
Eternal Sunshine of the Spotless Mind with Jim Carrey and Kate Winslet. It was a tough call to make because a argument could be made for The Truman Show. However,
The Majestic.
But this is a film that Shane and I have been talking about doing since this show started, since this show was a thing. So it's time.
I've wanted to revisit this one for so long.
Right.
And so I'm excited to get into it. So we'll do that next week. Make sure you're rating, reviewing, etc.
Review, share, and all of that.
Yep. And we will see you folks next time.
Take care.
Take a trip with us to Nilbog. Just promise not to drink the goo. Oh my God! If you get sucked into the Matrix, we will send a phone for you.
Do you believe in fate?
But every movie has a plot hole, and every hole gets filled somehow. Whiskey, wine, or blue milk. Just don't cut me off right now. We're the Plotaholics, a breakfast club of two. We're the Plotaholics, ripping plots apart for you.
Yeah, well, that's just like your opinion, man.